going on, everybody? This is another episode of Coordinated Chaos. On this week's episode, we will be recapping what happened in NFL Week 16, as well as we will be getting to the Thursday Night Football preview for Week 17 and the Saturday night game of Week 17 as well. Then we're also going to add a little bit of a new segment to the podcast, which is going to be an anytime touchdown parlay that I've just kind of pulled out of thin air. We'll see if it hits. If it does, awesome. We're going to make some money. If not, it is what it is. But I just wanted to add a little spice things up a little bit on this podcast. So let's go ahead and jump right into the Thursday Night Football game from Week 16. That was the Saints versus the Rams. In this matchup, the Rams pretty much controlled the game from the jump for the most part. They hopped out to a pretty early on lead. They really had Kyren Williams working hard in this game. He was just such a game changer for that offense right now. Obviously, Matthew Stafford's like I've been kind of getting at for like the past pretty much all season, honestly. Matthew Stafford's been playing out of his mind. He's got, obviously Puka Nacua, just such a game changer for him on the offensive side of the ball to go along with Cooper Kupp. And then Demarcus Robinson's kind of come out of nowhere and kind of taken the role of what Tutu Atwell was doing earlier on in the season, and he has made a big impact as well. And like I said, just with the addition of Kyren Williams this season, where they're just kind of utilizing him more, Sean McVay's really calling a good game plan with him involved, where he's getting light boxes to run against, and Kyren Williams is taking advantage of it at every turn, and so that is making the Rams offense extremely dangerous. And I've also alluded to in past podcasts about just how hard the defense is playing for the Rams, even though they don't have a whole lot of talent other than, Aaron Donald on the inside for the most part. They have a lot of young guys out there, but Raheem Morris has been doing a fantastic job with the defense. But yeah, pretty much Rams controlled the game. Saints try to get back into it very late in this game. Derek Carr still playing a little bit inconsistent on offense. They didn't really get Alvin Kamara as involved in the passing game in this game as I thought they would. And then, like I said, basically the only guy that kind of really showed up in this one was Chris Olave. Rashid Shaheed had a nice little play, but outside of those guys making some plays, there wasn't a whole lot to be desired from the offense of the New Orleans Saints. I think they're pretty much out of it at this point, playoff contention-wise in the NFC. But the Rams are right there in the thick of things in the NFC, and like I've been kind of alluding to in past weeks, I don't think anybody wants to see the Rams as a 6 or 7 seed in the NFC as hot as they have been. Obviously, it's going to be a big game in Week 17, or Week 18, I should say, against the San Francisco 49ers and the Rams. It's going to be a really fun one because obviously now we'll get to it a little bit later. What the San Francisco 49ers did this weekend, that game is going to have huge implications moving forward. Let's go on to the next game, Bengals versus Steelers. This game was a shocker. Obviously, they had Mason Rudolph playing in this game the weekend of Christmas, obviously. So you got the Rudolph the reindeer comparisons going on where like he's going to come and save Christmas for the Steelers in this one, and he does the job, man. He comes in and he plays well. He just gets the ball out of his hands. He gets it to his playmakers like George Pickens, who had 4 receptions for I think 195 yards and 2 touchdowns. So anybody that was left in fantasy in the playoffs there in the first, or I guess this was the semifinals, man, you had a good day. So George Pickens went crazy in this one. They got the run game going a little bit in this one. The Bengals defense has been giving up a lot to rushing attacks as of late, and it's only going to get worse because if I'm not mistaken, DJ Reader got hurt in this game, and I don't think he's probably going to play for the rest of the season. So that's a tough loss for the Cincinnati Bengals, who are still kind of in it in the AFC playoff picture. The Steelers kind of eke their way back into the playoff picture as well with this win against a division rival. I don't know if I really want to see either one of these teams in the playoffs at this point based on the amount of injuries they have sustained and stuff of that nature. But Mike Tomlin obviously is going to be a guy that's going to fight for one of those playoff spots. He's going to fight for getting his team above 500. He still has that record going right now. But yeah, impressive stuff from the Steelers, just always finding a way to scrap and claw their way to a winning record at all costs. Let's go on to the next game, Bills versus Chargers. This was obviously one of those games where we thought, I even put on, social media on my TikTok and on, YouTube Shorts, my little gambling previews. And I thought easily the Bills would cover here at -12. It was not even close. The Chargers almost won this game, but the Bills and Josh Allen just kind of refused for that to happen. James Cook really wasn't as involved in this game because they were down so early in this game. But at the end of the day, Josh Allen and the Bills get the job done. Easton Stick and the Chargers fought hard. They got that interim head coach bump that I didn't think they would get this late in the season. I thought they would just kind of roll over and die, to be completely honest with you. That's not what happened in this one. They fought really hard in this one and tried to win this game, obviously, because, the guy that's taking over for the Chargers wants a shot at the head coaching job moving forward. But they just couldn't get the job done. Josh Allen and the Bills are fighting to stay in contention in the AFC playoff picture, and I think they're going to stick around. The fact that they won was huge because they still technically have a outside shot at winning the AFC East. They really needed the Dolphins to falter this weekend, which didn't happen, which we will get to later. But Bills get another big win to, cement themselves into, basically playoff contention in the AFC. Let's move on to the Colts versus the Falcons. This one was surprising. I really thought the Colts were going to kind of put their foot down on this one. Falcons team that was kind of reeling after the fact that they lost to the worst team, one of the worst teams in all of football, in the Panthers. But then the Falcons came out and played well. They started Taylor Heineke in this game, so that was kind of a boost for them, I guess. Desmond Ritter's not very good. Neither is Taylor Heineke, to be fair, but they at least got their playmakers more involved in this game. Last game, they just refused to. Arthur Smith doing some really odd things on offense. This time, they got Bijan Robinson going. They got, early on, they got Kyle Pitts going. They got Drake London involved in the offense. I think, Taylor Heineke has more of a chance to get his playmakers on, the wide receiving core and the tight end, position a little bit more work because he's just a better quarterback than Desmond Ridder is. But, it just is what it is. Arthur Smith just continues to, he's just got to continue to get his playmakers the ball, and that's just the end, that's just it. If he doesn't, they're going to lose. If he does, they have a good chance at winning. And that's just the reality of the situation for the Falcons right now. They win a huge one against the Colts in this one. Like I said, I thought the Colts were probably going to put their foot down and really submit themselves as one of the AFC, playoff. I mean, it's a three-way tie still right now for the AFC South. So one of them's got to win it, but a few of them could still technically make one of the wild card spots, or even two of the wild card spots, depending on how this goes down to the wire in Week 18. But let's move on. Falcons get a big win, obviously. They're still right there knocking on the door of the NFC South, so that was huge for them. Let's move on to the Packers versus the Panthers. And this one, man, the Panthers fought really hard. Bryce Young looked the most competent he has all season long. He made some plays in this game that kept them in this game. The Packers offense is operating at a high level still scoring points against a pretty good Panthers defense. They have not really given up on the season, even though obviously the season's over for them for the most part. They wanted to show, their strength and just how hard they can play, and they did a good job in this game. But the Packers are just explosive on offense right now. They were even without Jaden Reed. Obviously, Christian Watson's out with that hamstring. They had Dontavian Wicks starting in this game. He goes out in the game after catching a touchdown. He had a chest injury, so he goes out. They just were depleted in the weapons department and still were able to put up points. So I like the offense. Matt LaFleur doing a great job. What's really concerning about the Packers is the defense. Joe Barry, their defensive coordinator, I've never liked what he's done. I think he wasted a lot of good years of Aaron Rodgers when he was still there. And the fact that he still has a job there is very disappointing, for the fact that they could be so much more just powerful as a team in the NFC playoff picture and in the NFC in general if he was just out of a job, which just sounds bad. Never want to really root for somebody to get fired, but whenever you see the negligence of, the defensive coordinator and the things he puts out there on display every Sunday, it's just really annoying and frustrating. If you're a fan of the Packers, if you're just a fan of good football, you think the Packers can be a much better team if they just had a more competent defensive coordinator, and that's just the reality. Packers get the job done at the end of the day, but like I said, the Panthers fought really hard. Bryce Young looked way better than he has all season. DJ Chark showed up in this game and had a pretty decent day. But yeah, at the end of the day, Packers get the job done, and they stay in contention for the time being in the NFC playoff picture moving forward. Let's move on. Browns versus Texans. Man, my man Joe Flacco was out there slinging it again, man. He just chucks it out there. He doesn't care. Like I said last week, man, he's just having fun. He's old, and he just wants to get the ball out of his hands to his playmakers, and he's just hanging balls up there for Amari Cooper to go run underneath and catch touchdowns. Amari Cooper has like 160 yards in this game or something like that, and I think a couple touchdowns. And I mean, he had like 50 fantasy points. If you had him in your starting lineup, you for the most part won this week. But yeah, dude, Joe Flacco just out there throwing the ball around the field against the Texans defense, who's been playing pretty good as of late. But obviously, with the fact that Case Keenum started this game on offense, they had less possessions because their offense was just kind of not very good. Case Keenum's a decent guy. He can get you maybe a win once in a while as the backup quarterback. He did get replaced in this game by Davis Mills, and the offense started to look a little bit better in my opinion, but it still wasn't great. And Joe Flacco and the Browns defense just smothered their offense. They're just without a lot of weapons right now. Nico Collins came back in this game. But they just had, just very little production from their weapons in general. The Houston Texans, I should clarify. But the Browns defense, like I said, definitely Super Bowl championship type level defense right now. If Joe Flacco can continue to do what he's doing, obviously he's got to kind of hone it in a little bit, throwing a little bit too many picks. And a good team's going to take advantage of those picks if he keeps throwing them. So he's got to rein it in a little bit, but as long as he stays relatively aggressive and keeps throwing the ball to his playmakers like Cooper and Njoku and those guys, this team's going to be really tough to beat in the playoffs, and they will be getting into the playoffs, that's for sure. They're at 10-5, which is very impressive for a team that's went through several quarterbacks at this point. I mean, from starting with Deshaun Watson to going to DTR and PJ Walker and now Joe Flacco, and they've kind of found their guy in Joe, who's just being aggressive and giving them a chance on offense. It's awesome. It's fun. I love this Joe Flacco storyline. He thinks it's 2012 again. He's going to take this Browns team all the way to the Super Bowl like he did with the Ravens back then. I love every second of this Joe Flacco story. He's just out there chucking it, man. And you got to respect that at some level. Let's go on to Vikings versus the Lions. This one, man, it was closer than I thought. Even with Nick Mullins throwing 3 or 4 interceptions in this game, he's also a chucker, which is funny. He got benched for a guy that they thought turned the ball over too much in Josh Dobbs, and he essentially he put the same product on the field. Essentially, he's just out there throwing the ball around, and he doesn't care if it's in triple coverage. He's going to throw it to Justin Jefferson, which in his defense, I mean, Justin Jefferson comes down with a lot of those balls, so I can't really fault him a whole lot for that. But man, Nick Mullins, I knew the magic wasn't going to continue for another week. He had a 300-yard passing game last week, and then he had another 400-yard passing game in this week. But he did throw all those interceptions and kind of, basically limited what they could do on offense because of that. And the Detroit Lions took advantage of it. Jahmyr Gibbs had another good game. That offense is just kind of clicking right now for the Detroit Lions. Still very concerned about their defense. Even with all the picks and stuff that they had, they still weren't great. I mean, the Vikings still scored a lot of points in this game. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with the Lions moving forward. They need to win some games to potentially still get that 2 seed in the NFC playoff picture. So Lions get a big win, Vikings lose, and they're starting to slip out of the NFC playoff picture. We'll see what happens the next 2 weeks. Let's move on to the Seahawks versus the Titans. In this one, it was a low-scoring affair. It was kind of a defensive struggle a little bit. Geno Smith was efficient, but it just wasn't super pretty, to be honest with you. DK Metcalf makes an incredible play in this game, like a one-handed back corner of the pylon type grab. It was one of the better DK Metcalf plays of the season, and we've kind of missed that. I think he's made a whole lot of highlight plays in his career, but we haven't seen a ton of it this season, which is unfortunate. But he's starting to show out a little bit more now, and they got Tyler Lockett a little bit more involved in the offense in this one. And I think Geno Smith is the better quarterback of the two between him and Drew Lock. I don't think Drew Lock can kind of replicate what he did at the end there against the Eagles in that game, which has proven to be a bad loss for the Eagles considering what happened the rest of the weekend. But we'll get to that later. But yes, Seahawks get a big win over the Titans. They needed it to stay there in the playoff picture in the NFC. So big win. Let's move on. Buccaneers versus Jaguars, the Battle of Florida. And man, I said it last week, and I was proven correct. I think the Jaguars are cooked, and they got absolutely cooked in this game. They could not do anything against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who their pass defense has been terrible all season, and the Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence could not take advantage of it. He gets hurt in this game, which is like the 15th injury that Trevor Lawrence has suffered this season. between his ankle, concussions, shoulder injuries, all like a knee injury earlier in the season where he's like an MCL sprain or something like that. He has been injured and beat up all season long, and the Jaguars have not been able to do a good job of putting the offense in position to win. Like I said, I've complained about it all earlier on in the season when I knew Press Taylor was going to be the offensive coordinator for that team. I thought that was a bad idea. He was never a good play caller or just staff member in general when he was with the Eagles under Doug Peterson, and I just never thought it would have worked there. I think Doug Peterson has to kind of just give him the axe when it comes to next year. I don't think he's going to do it mid-season here, but the Jaguars are slipping out of contention. Like I said, they are in a 3-way tie with the Colts and the Texans right now at 8-7, I believe. And I don't think the Jaguars are going to be able to make it. I really don't, and I kind of hope that's the case for the for the better good, for the greater good of Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson, because I think if that happens, if they miss the playoffs somehow, that will make them change some things on the offensive side of the ball. Like Press Taylor, I think he's the problem. So it just kind of is what it is. But yeah, let's go on. Let me talk about the Buccaneers actually a little bit. Baker Mayfield playing out of his mind. Mike Evans, one of this generation's best wide receivers of all time. He is going crazy this season, over 30 years old, and he's still got that streak of 1,000-yard seasons in a row since he started his career. He's in the record books, obviously. He's probably on pace to be a Hall of Famer, and good for him, man. I've always liked Mike Evans. He's such a good player, and I'm glad that Baker's got this rapport with him where they're just making plays, and it's really fun to see Baker Mayfield. There's rumors out there he might get a new extension, which would be really cool for him. So yeah, I look forward to seeing them potentially being in the playoffs as well and see what they can do. I honestly, as an Eagles fan, do not want to see them if we end up at the 2 seed and they end up somewhere in there. I think they're going to win the division though, but the Eagles could only see them in the divisional round if I'm not mistaken. But either way, they are hot right now, and I do not like that. Todd Bowles has had the number of the Eagles offense for a few years. Even though we did beat them earlier on in this season in Tampa Bay, it's just still not a great feeling if the Eagles have to play them at some point. So yeah, Buccaneers playing great football right now. Next game, Cowboys versus Dolphins. This was a crazy game, back and forth, close. Jason Sanders kicking multiple 50-yard field goals to keep the Dolphins in this game, essentially. Cowboys played pretty well, but at the end of the day, the Cowboys defense could not get a stop to let the Dolphins go down there and kick a game-winning field goal with time expiring there. Dak Prescott did lead a touchdown drive to take the lead by 1 at the end of this game. It was a great drive, great throw, great catch by Brandon Cooks on the side of the end zone there. But at the end of the day, the Cowboys defense just let up a game-winning drive by Tua in that offense. They needed to get a couple field goals or a couple first downs there to get into field goal range, and they got it done at the end of the day. Dolphins finally beat a team that's over 500, or a winning record, I should say. And so they kind of get that monkey off their back. Cowboys continue to lose to teams that don't have a winning record. And so the only team they've done, they're 1 in whatever, like 3 or 4 now, or 5 at this point. The only team that they've beaten is the Eagles. That is a good team, so it's funny that that's the case. Obviously the Eagles' defense has been Swiss cheese all season, and the offense in that game against the Cowboys was just turnover prone, and so that game was doomed from the beginning. But yeah, Cowboys still continue to struggle on the road. They have not won one in a while. They are basically undefeated and just completely unstoppable at home. But on the road, they are very susceptible, and if they end up not winning the division, as long as the Eagles essentially win out, the Cowboys don't win the division, then they are starting the playoffs on the road, and they don't get a home playoff game until very late, as long as they keep winning. So it's going to be crazy. The Cowboys may, falter once again in the playoffs like they have done the last however many years in a row now because of the fact that they don't get a home playoff game. But that's just a sign of a just kind of mediocre team. They're a good team. Let's not get too crazy. But if you just can't win on the road, then it's obviously a problem. And so, if they don't win the division, it is what it is. They will have to be on the road in the playoffs, and that could spell the end of the season for the Dallas Cowboys. Dolphins get a huge win. They stake their claim as the number 2 seed for the time being, as the Ravens get a huge win, which I'll get to in a minute. But yeah, Dolphins win. They kind of stave off, the push for the Bills as, AFC East winners. And I think it could still potentially go down to the last game of the season against each other there, but it may not mean anything depending on what happens until Week 18. Let's move on. Eagles versus Giants. This one, man, the Eagles got out to a hot start. They looked pretty good on offense and defense to start the game, 20-3 at half, and then just craziness, just absolute chaos breaks out in the second half right off the bat. The Eagles get the ball to start the second half, and Isaiah Simmons pushes Olamide Zaccheaus directly into Boston Scott on the kickoff, and he fumbles. The Giants get the ball. Saquon Barkley goes in for a touchdown, and it's a completely different ball game. And then right after that, the Eagles get the ball back again. They're driving down the field, having a pretty solid pretty solid drive, I should say. And then Jalen Hurts throws the ball outside to Dallas Goedert on a little outbreaking route towards the sideline. He slips, and Adoree Jackson takes it for a pick six touchdown. And then, it's just the Giants are back in this game. The Eagles luckily score again, but then Darius Slayton gets a giant touchdown throw from Tyrod Taylor, which obviously in this game the Eagles essentially made the Giants bench Tommy DeVito. He was not doing anything on offense, and so they needed a spark. They got Tyrod Taylor in there, and he was making plays. He was running around. He was just a little bit more mobile than Tommy DeVito. So at this point, that's what they needed. The pass rush was kind of getting after and pressuring the quarterback when it was Tommy DeVito still in there. So they needed somebody that could really get out of the pocket and still make some plays, and Tyrod kind of gave them that spark. Giants got back in the game, like I said, but then the Eagles finally kind of put some drives together and were able to kind of bleed the clock out, get a field goal to kind of put them up by a couple scores. And then they did have a chance there at the end, the Giants, I should say, to tie the game up with if they got a touchdown and got a 2-point conversion at the end there, and Tyrod Taylor throws an interception to rookie Keely Ringo, which was a nice thing to see, a rookie stepping up in a big moment like that. But basically, this was at the end of the day, this is just way too close of a game for a bad Giants team to be in a game with the Eagles, who are just such a better team talent-wise and everything like that. But the same themes keep popping up for the Eagles right now, which is just some of the play calling, some of the coaching. It seems like, and I've beat this horse to death at this point, that the Eagles offense seems to get away from what's working in games way too often. When a Shane Steichen last year would have doubled down on a lot of those situations and basically made the defense make him make a counter punch. And then when he did, it was usually a big play. So the offensive play calling is still a problem. Offensive designing is still a problem. The Eagles have no answer for, all-out blitz at this point. Every single time they bring pretty much everybody, like a zero blitz. They just don't have anybody breaking in towards where Jalen Hurts is looking. He's always having to bail out of the pocket and move right or left and try to find somebody on a scramble drill, essentially, when you need to have hot routes when it's an all-out blitz. If it's cover zero, you got to have a guy that's going to be going 5 or 6 yards and turn around immediately, where Jalen Hurts can have him right in his sights and throw a little ball to him and just see what happens after that, because it's just going to be man coverage right there. So Eagles offense, very concerning still. Eagles defense still giving up plays, but it's looked better as of late. Still can't really get after the quarterback with 4. Can't get a whole lot of pressure in general on the opposing quarterback. They're getting pressures. They're just not finishing with sacks at this point. So that's concerning moving forward. But like I said, the Eagles still have, just the Cardinals and the Giants once again on the schedule. They still have a very good chance to win out and win the NFC East. And it's quite an indictment on the Cowboys if essentially, my opinion of it right now, the Cowboys are a better team than the Eagles, and the Eagles are still probably going to end up winning the division, which is just funny. It's just a funny situation where the Dallas Cowboys, I consider, probably a better team right now than the Philadelphia Eagles, and they're just not going to win the division still. So moving on, we got the Ravens versus the 49ers. Great game if you are a Ravens fan. 49ers in this one do not have a good showing whatsoever. Brock Purdy comes out, throws 4 interceptions in this game. Basically, the only momentum they had in this game was a safety that happened at the beginning of the game. And realistically, that was honestly not something that is going to normally happen in a game. So apparently Lamar Jackson obviously backs out of the pocket there, and he's trying to escape the pass rush of the 49ers there. He starts going into the end zone, and the line judge behind the play is backpedaling, trying to get out of the way of the play, trips and falls, and Lamar Jackson trips over him and throws the ball, or attempts to throw the ball out of bounds. They call intentional grounding inside of the end zone and call it a safety, which if he doesn't trip on the ref there, he probably gets a little bit of room away from Chase Young, who was chasing Lamar Jackson at that point, and probably gets enough arm strength on the ball to get the ball out of bounds past the line of scrimmage, and it's not an intentional grounding. It's not a safety. So it was a little bit of a wonky play in itself. Just crazy that the refs can continue to just start implementing themselves into these games and making themselves bigger than they should be in these games. But yeah, so essentially that was like the only real momentum that the 49ers really had in the game. And then, obviously Lamar Jackson was just such a game changer for the Ravens offense in this game. It's very clear that his escapability, his athleticism, the use of his legs were the main problem for the 49ers on defense here. He was able to get out of the pocket. He was able to escape pressure when it came. If they had a free rusher, he was able to make a miss, and then he was able to make plays downfield. The game plan and the play calling on the offensive side of the ball for the Ravens was very on point. If he knew that he had the numbers on the outside, they were throwing a bubble screen out there, not like the Eagles just throwing bubble screens to throw them for the most part. And they were actually working at a high clip for the Ravens this when they're getting the ball out of their hands to Zay Flowers, who was just making incredible plays in this game. He was getting open. The play designing, play calling, all of it was going right for the Ravens in this game. And the defense obviously had a lot to do with the fact that the Ravens were able to basically just blow out the 49ers in this one. Kyle Hamilton had his handprint all over this game. He was such a big part of this game. I mean, his hustle plays, just in general, is what got them in this game defensively. And it basically, at one point, Kyle Hamilton gets planted in the ground by a lineman. It was basically getting sit on by a lineman, gets up, gets back into the play, and intercepts a ball that gets tipped up in the air. And he's just such a big playmaker. Obviously had the first interception in the game that was in the red zone, which just took points off the board for the 49ers as well. Just great overall team win for the Ravens, I should say. And they look poised to be one of the best teams in all of football, obviously. The 49ers did not show up to this game, even though it was at home. Tough environment for the Ravens to go into and win a game like that. And the Ravens are proving to be probably the Super Bowl favorite at this point. I mean, based on the way that Lamar Jackson's playing, their playmakers are making things happen right now. And the defense is playing out of their mind considering what they made Brock Purdy do on offense there. Pretty much squashed any type of MVP type of I guess momentum, you should say, for Brock Purdy going forward, as he threw 4 interceptions in this game and looked very pedestrian. Essentially, the blueprint, per se, for the 49ers and how to beat them is pretty apparent. The problem is it's extremely hard to do. So essentially, the 49ers, in order to beat them, you just have to get a lead on them, which is not easy to do because their defense is very good, their offense is very good, and a lot of the times they come at you in waves, and they are liable to score a ton of points in back-to-back possessions. They don't settle for field goals a whole lot because their offense is so efficient and their playmakers are so good. But basically the blueprint, like I said, is just get a lead. If you get a lead, then you have to make Brock Purdy and that offense come back. And I think they have a little bit of a problem with that. I think they struggle in that department of coming back in games. Obviously, Kyle Shanahan has that record of he's like 0-37 or 0-38 now when he goes into a fourth quarter down by 8 or more points. They've never come back and win in one of those situations, and I think it's only like 1-38 now if they're like down by 7 or less or something like that. So just coming back for Kyle Shanahan system, especially headed up by a Brock Purdy, is not something that they are willing to do, and they're not very good at. So that is obviously the key there, is to grab a first half lead if possible, and just get some stops on defense. Essentially, just you can't just be trading possessions with the 49ers because they're so efficient on offense and they're so good. Their talent is just going to outweigh you at some point or another. In this game, though, I will say they had some injury scares in this one. Trent Williams left this game with a groin, and then they had some backup linemen come in and also get hurt. So their O-line is banged up. Obviously, Brock Purdy also leaves this game for a few plays. And then he just never came back in the game because they had Sam Darnold in there, and he actually put together a touchdown drive for them on offense. He had a stinger, one that I guess is piled up on top of because of the stinger he got a couple weeks ago. So he is dealing with that as well. So, obviously a banged up 49ers team going to play the Commanders shouldn't matter a whole lot. But I will be curious to see if the Commanders do decide to maybe start Jacoby Brissett, who looked much better operating that offense than Sam Howell has the last few weeks. And so the 49ers team will not be just a complete pushover, especially if Jacoby Brissett's in there operating that offense. They have a lot of weapons on offense. Their defense is still very bad, so the 49ers should take advantage of that. But we'll see. I would assume Brock Purdy plays in the game against the Commanders, even with the back-to-back stingers he's sustained. We'll see if Trent Williams can go in this next one. But if these injuries linger into Week 18 when they play the Rams, they are liable to lose one of these two next games, and that would be huge for the chances of the Eagles potentially stealing the 1 seed, or even the Detroit Lions stealing the 1 seed from them. So a lot of big-time implications going forward for their injuries and whatnot, and obviously just losing this game was just not great for their confidence moving forward about their chances of, if they do happen to win the Super Bowl or get to the Super Bowl, win the NFC champions or become the NFC champions, then they have to play a Ravens team or another hot team going into the AFC, going into the Super Bowl, I should say, and that could be not so great for them. That's pretty much it for the Week 16 recap. Let's get into the Thursday Night Football preview for Week 17. It is going to be Jets at the Browns, and the Browns are favored by 7.5 in this matchup. As I've stated, I'm a fan of this Joe Flacco resurgence. I'm a fan of this Browns team. Their defense is so good. They keep themselves in these games, and Joe Flacco is just slinging the ball around right now. The problem with that is I still think this Jets defense is very, very opportunistic. They're very good. Their rush defense is not so great, but their pass defense is awesome. Joe Flacco obviously prone to throwing some interceptions as of late, and that is not a good sign for a team that is very, very good at capitalizing on those types of interceptions or those types of turnovers, interceptions, fumbles, things of that nature. And so I think I'm going to go, this is going to be surprising, I think I'm going to go with the Jets to cover here at 7.5. So I'll go Jets plus 7.5. That's what it's sitting at right now through DraftKings. So that's what I feel like right now. Just gut feeling, no real research into this. Just I think the Browns will still win the game. So threading the needle a little bit here, I think the Browns win, but I think the Jets keep it close. Let's go on to the Saturday night football game. Lions at Cowboys. Cowboys are favored by 6 in this one. I'm having a hard time with this one. The Cowboys, I think they probably bounce back. I think the Cowboys probably end up winning this game. The thing that concerns me with the Lions defense is their pass defense. I think the Cowboys can light them up in this one. And then once you get the pass game going for the Dallas Cowboys, then they can start running the ball a little bit with Tony Pollard and those guys. I think they're going to be able to score a lot of points here. Detroit is not going to have as much of a problem, I don't think, scoring on offense either. I think with the run game that the Detroit Lions have with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, I think they can give the Cowboys trouble. I think it's going to be a shootout type football game. To be honest, though, I thought the Dolphins and the Cowboys game was going to be a shootout as well. Turned out to be more of a close game. Only scored 20 points, whatever it was, to win that game for the Dolphins. But I think this is going to be more of a shootout. I think both defenses are going to let up big plays in this one through the run game and the pass game. But at the end of the day, like I said, I think the Cowboys win this one. But I think I like the Lions to cover here at +6. So I will go with the Lions to cover +6 against the Cowboys. Cowboys to win, once again, threading the needle. It's not great that I think that's going to go that way. But, it is what it is. And I think the Lions can keep themselves in this one. And then I think the Cowboys winning would pretty much give the Eagles the fast track to the number 2 seed. And then, like I said, we'll see what the San Francisco 49ers do for the last 2 weeks of the season. See if the Eagles can maybe steal the 1 seed back, even though, obviously what's reigning as a super tough loss right now for the Eagles was that Seahawks game. If they would have won that game, they would be the 1 seed right now based on the fact that the 49ers did lose to the Ravens. So tough loss. You can't take any of these games for granted going down the stretch. I know the Eagles' schedule moving forward is not super tough, but they just got to hone in and get the job done in both those games. Don't like Week 18 being at MetLife, where it's just taking the soul of a lot of players. That field is terrible. It just, so many injuries come out of that field because of the way it's made, and I just hope that the Eagles get out of Week 18 healthy as possible, so they can have like a decent playoff run. Even if the offense is kind of broken right now, the defense is kind of letting up plays. I just want to see good playoff football. I don't want to see any crazy injuries before the playoffs start in the NFC. That pretty much wraps it up for the Thursday Night Football and Saturday Night Football previews. Let's jump into the last segment, a new segment I got going on here, which is an anytime touchdown parlay that I'm liking going into this weekend, and it's going to be all over the Thursday Night Football and Saturday Night Football games. So the first one that I like, the first leg of the parlay, I should say, is David Njoku. He's at plus 180 anytime touchdown scorer. I like that a lot. I think Joe Flacco is still going to be able to throw the ball. I think the tight end position will be one that's going to be more susceptible to big plays against that Jets defense. I think he's going to be struggling to get the ball out to, Amari Cooper and Elijah Moore and those guys, just because their safeties and their cornerbacks are so good out there. But I think he can take advantage of potentially the linebackers of the Jets, and David Njoku will get a touchdown in this one. Joe Flacco has been targeting him a lot, so I like that as well. Next one, Hunter Lepke. I think that's how you say his last name. He is the fullback for the Cowboys. He is sitting at plus 1,400 anytime touchdown. They got him super involved early on in the game against the Dolphins, and I think that's gonna be a trend that continues, even though he did fumble in that game, which kind of made them a little bit more hesitant to go to him. But I think they're going to give him a second chance in this game, and I think they're going to try to use him in the goal line more, because Tony Pollard has been struggling as of late to pound the rock into the end zone once they get into the goal line situations. I think they're going to use him a little bit more often in there, and I think he probably gets a touchdown here against the Detroit Lions on Saturday night, so I'm looking forward to that. So those two, David Njoku and Hunter Lepke, anytime touchdown parlay. If you bet $10, you get $420 back in that. So I think it's a nice little, upgrade there in money. I like the two bets. Not saying it's guaranteed to hit whatsoever, but bang for your buck is there, and so I like those two to score touchdowns on Thursday and Saturday respectively. All right, that pretty much wraps it up for the NFL Week 16 recap episode, and I appreciate everybody watching and tuning in and listening wherever you may be. Please subscribe, turn on the notification bells, rate, review on the podcast platforms and things of that nature, and I will talk to you guys next week. Also, I hope everybody had a great Christmas weekend. It was very fun and festive for me, so like I said, I hope everybody had a great one, and I will talk to you guys next week. See ya.